All right, it's that time again, everybody, or at least, maybe an hour past that time, but we're here. Hopefully, you're here. It's Alan Ritchson, Reacher, Lead Child, Amazon Prime Time. We're going to break down Reacher Season 3, Episode 6 tonight. We've both watched it today, and we got a lot of comments in the queue, so we might as well just get started with them. I'm Dan, that's Tim, and Barry Allen is slow. Tells us that Francis effing Neagley with the flex.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she definitely showed exactly how awesome she is in this episode. I think you got to see all the little things, right? She just saw just the silhouettes of some guys in the glass that she knew weren't supposed to be there, and all of a sudden it was just like boom. It was over for those guys. You knew it was over for those guys as soon as she knew they were there, and they didn't know that she knew they were there. And then the guy that she left alive, and then just sat there drinking her coffee, just like nothing's going on the whole time, and then waits till he's about to die and then calls the ambulance. That's just awesome. So you gotta love Francis Neagley, man. And the one thing I don't like about a lot of these is that, like, the same thing in season 1, she was totally underutilized in both these seasons so far, and season 2, she was definitely a big player in, but season 1 and season 3, not so much. So I think that Amazon is giving a clinic on what you do for the strong, independent woman character, because there are other studios out there trying to do this and failing miserably. All right. And the way that you do it is you take an adapted character that's already written that way, get an actress that can absolutely nail the role, give her a moment in every season where you're going to show exactly who she is, and then the rest is history, man. So they're doing a great job with it. What do you think, Dan?
I wrote this down. Okay, you're an ambulance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, that was great. Call me an ambulance.
Call me an ambulance.
Okay, you're an ambulance. Great dad joke moment, man. Yeah, absolutely.
No sense of humor. When she's eating the cereal, she comes to the fridge. Move.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't
make me do it. Yeah, that was
And I don't know why Lee Child never did this, because all of his novels are about Reacher. Reacher is the character in all of them. But there is a ripe opportunity for a spinoff series here, because Neagley works at a private detective agency in Chicago. She could have an episodic type show, not a single season arc type show. She could be breaking down mysteries and being a badass with a new case every hour.
Yeah.
And I would watch that show. I would watch that show twice, like every time it came out, because she is, in the Reacherverse. Go ahead.
But no, when we get the spinoff, I feel like a lot of people feel like when we get the spinoff and it's the strong, independent female character, it sometimes feels a little forced. I don't think it would here, just because of the character that we already have, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's how a lot of people are being really hesitant about Ballerina for that reason, right?
Right.
They're not wanting the spinoff to be kind of a forced thing. But I don't think that would be the case here. I think that this actress, she has carried the day every season so far. She's done a great job with the character. And I really think that I'm with you, Dan. That's a fantastic opportunity. Amazon needs to start listening to that. They definitely have an opportunity there for a spinoff.
It would be an amazing show. Neagley in the Reacherverse, the hierarchy of badasses goes Reacher, Neagley, way up there.
Yeah, exactly. And Reacher thinks that, which is different.
And we know he's right, because Reacher's always right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
exactly. Reacher's not being modest. His estimations are always 100% accurate. So, Thug
Yeah.
Dog. I don't think Quinn is coming off as the sinister monster they set up. Is he any worse than what we saw in season 2? Uh, I don't know. The scene this week we finally, this is the most Quinn we've got. And the scene back at the mansion with the Becks was pretty good. The where he makes
That was a great scene. No,
yeah, makes Beck the
that was a
younger.
great scene. I think I see where we're coming from here, though. In that, is that any different than the previous season where the guy threw a dude out of a helicopter and tortured the members of the 110 and did? I mean, I kind of get what we're saying here. I think that there's just a lot of Quinn that they kind of had to pull back on because of, like you and I have talked about, Dan.
Yeah.
They had to pull back on Quinn a little bit just because maybe they're wanting to be able to release this on cable at some point, or maybe they thought that it would improve the ratings if it wasn't as violent or sinister or just downright evil. But yeah, I mean, he does kind of feel like your typical mob big boss. It doesn't really feel like anything that we haven't seen from the previous 2 seasons of Reacher before. I could go with that.
Yeah. Yeah. In basically in the book, the awfulness of Quinn was almost entirely established within the flashback episode
Yeah.
within the storyline that establishes Quinn and Lieutenant or the I forget her name now, the girl that was working
Cole.
on Cole.
Cole.
Yeah, yeah, that was the storyline that established how awful he was. When they dialed back what he did to her, that really neutered him quite a bit, because I mean, you saw more than you needed to see. They definitely showed you that it was bad, but they showed you quite a bit that let you know that it wasn't that bad. She wasn't totally disfigured and mutilated, and that you didn't have to know that. You could have imagined it. Uh, so that did knock him down quite a few rungs. I did like the matching set line with the close up on the missing ear was pretty
Yeah.
sinister. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
we'll see
for
if that
sure.
happens. I don't remember that happening in the book. So, and I can tell you
Yeah.
that Mrs. Beck was alive in the books and getting raped fairly regularly by Paulie and I think maybe Duke also. So
Gotcha.
that was
So
part of the
there was
awfulness.
a lot more sinister stuff in the book that it sounds like they just kind of pulled back on, maybe. So
Yeah.
gotcha.
John Snow says nothing. The escape scene was badass, classic Die Hard wannabe stuff. Reacher's silhouette before the dude knows he's there is very Undertaker, Brock Lesnar type stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah,
When he's in the woods, yeah, the you see Reacher's silhouette, and the
yeah,
dude is kind of like looking in the woods. It's classic, man. It's classic Die Hard, classic Under Siege, I mean, all of that. It was very, very much reminiscent of that. So that was a very well done scene. That's the scene that I think a lot of people might have been thinking they were gonna get throughout the whole series, was something like that every episode. And we really haven't got something like that every episode. So I think that was really that scene, I think, is what has made this my favorite episode of the season so far.
yeah. Jason Voorhees has nothing on Jack Reacher in this, And when he bends
Yeah.
down against the mud, I'm thinking, Rambo 2.
First
You know,
Blood. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, Rambo 2, and also Predator.
Yeah.
But
Predator. Yeah. Arnold did.
we'll
Yeah.
never
Of course.
the Rambo 2. You'll never forget the scene where the Viet Cong, the soldiers going by, and there's mud behind him. All of a sudden, Stallone's eyes open up in the mud, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh God,
Yeah. Yeah.
Rambo's there."
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
and then the whole thing with the laundromat, that was kind of another. It was like he shows up, he's all black with the mud, and
yeah,
it was
yeah.
fun. But
I
yeah,
still don't
I thought it was
tonight.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
We got Reacher cheeks. Mariana Slow wants to point that out. So that makes me really happy. You got more than just Alan Ritchson with his shirt off this week. You got
That's
his
right.
full on bum.
You got to see that fully sculpted derriere, ladies. So enjoy. It's.
Yeah, and you
I'm
know
I'm
what?
sure I'm sure that they the wives enjoyed watching that with the husbands this week for sure.
That is the nudity that they can shoehorn in and still get that basic cable
Yeah,
replay rewatchability in,
yeah.
because
That's
butts have
TNT
been
11 o'clock at night rerun type stuff. Yep, that's
ever
exactly
since
right.
yeah, I mean NYPD Blue was doing it on network television 20 years ago. So butts
Hmm.
are fair game.
Yeah.
And so we
Well,
did,
and
I know some of the people in the comments are on boob watch. We
yeah.
had Duffy at the top of the episode. I don't know if we got any comments, but I feel like uh what was that season? But anyway, talking about poorly acted, that was a weird scene where she just straight up kissed Reacher out of nowhere. I don't know
Like,
where
now
that came
was that
from.
scene in the book, Dan? Was that scene in the book? Because I could see a situation where in a literary form, they're going through a tussle of emotion and they're going back and forth and they're doing all this stuff, but acting that scene was just weird. It just did not make sense the way that they did it. And
Yeah,
and they didn't do it well. I think that's what's being pointed out here. They
yeah, I'm gonna,
didn't do that scene well, and so that's another thing that kind of made it so
yeah.
that we didn't
I'm
really
gonna
get the
says I
maximum.
am the night. The most awkward and poorly acted scene this season so far was a kissing scene between Reacher and Duffy. Both were atrocious. I will say that they've taken a lot of the events and the plot from the book and kind of tossed it in a blender, and things are not happening in the same order. The pacing is off
Yeah,
from the book. And yes, Duffy was the love interest in the book, but it developed sooner. Reacher got out of the house more frequently. He had different excuses for leaving the house in the book. He used the wife to get out of the house quite a few times, and the tension and the sexual chemistry with Duffy happened slower and more believably in the book than this. And the fact that they didn't find room to squeeze it in at this point of the season, to me, you could have just not had it. You could have just not had.
that's what I was gonna say. I felt like the tension was definitely more with the maid, and then when the maid dies, that was it. You know what I mean? And I don't. I think that they always these James Bond esque characters think that they have to have James Bond esque, um, you know, relationships, and they don't always have to have that in order for the story to be interesting. I think that that's something that
Yeah,
needed to be rethought in this particular season. I would agree with that, Dan. If you weren't going to have it before this point, it definitely does not make sense at this point. And the way that they acted and the logic that they gave us for the way they acted did not make sense. It didn't add up at all.
yeah. I guess
So
vaguely they were hinting at that she was so moved that he didn't attempt to kill Quinn, even though he was surrounded by Quinn's henchmen and would have been gunned down immediately if he had made that move. But the fact that he didn't do that, and he mentions that maybe that CI was part of the reason, just brings her, she's overwhelmed and has to
and
kill
then she
somebody.
gets mad at him after she does it. And that doesn't make any sense. And then he very, very sterilely and as wooden as you possibly could said, "Yes, but you kissed me." And it that whole scene was just, it was a mess. It was a mess. So
Yeah.
this episode was great. That scene, I will agree, was not great. So
The banter when they were changing out of the wetsuits was better
that was much better. That
and
was
more
much better.
believable. Yeah.
Oh yeah. In the
Yeah.
moment it made a lot of sense what they were saying, and I mean that was so much better. But yeah,
Yeah.
that kissing scene in the alley was, that it was dumb. They should have left that out.
Yeah, I feel like they were really desperate to shoehorn it in. They couldn't make it work within the outline of
Mhm.
events, and they crammed it in there in a way that just didn't.
Yeah.
See, Richard, Quinn, and Beck at the best scene of the episode. That's the one we were talking about at the end with
Yeah.
the Russian roulette. That was
Mhm. That was
that was
intense. I mean, and for a scene that is just essentially four guys, right? It's Paulie and it's those
yeah,
three. Um, those three acted fantastic in that scene. So
yeah,
those three were very, very good. We all know Anthony Michael Hall has been an actor for a long time. He finally shows that fatherly emotion, and it was great. He did a
yeah,
great job with that. I feel like Quinn came through as the big bad in that moment. The one thing once again that we mentioned is Quinn was nerfed a little bit. That Russian mobster really talked down to him like he talks down to Beck. So it's like we're starting to see the hierarchy here, and Quinn is kind of the middle of the road guy. So
yeah,
that's kind of one of the things that it's just like he's middle management. He's not upper management. Okay. And
yeah.
so we're starting to see that, but yeah, I mean that was three great actors doing a great job. So bravo to that scene. It was very good.
Yeah. And Paulie, who
Yeah,
was
and
big.
Paulie stood there and looked big. I guess he did his job, but those three really carried the scene for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Paulie, he looked big, like one of the best because he is really big. So
Yeah, yeah,
Jon Soto's
exactly.
nothing. I just want to see big men fight. When do we get the epic clash between Reacher and Paulie? So I mean, I could see how Jon
It's
Soto's not.
coming, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
He would be all hyped up thinking it was coming this episode.
This is
And
like Clegan Bull 2.0, right? I mean, we know it's coming. It must come. These two
yeah,
enormous characters are here. They have to fight at some point, and it has to be without guns. It has to
yes,
be bare knuckle boxing, man. It has to be who is the strongest, who is the most tactical. It's definitely got to be that, and it's got to be coming soon. It's got to be. So yeah.
in a different type of show, written by a different type of team, based on a different type of source material, our hero would have ran Polly over with that plow this week. You know,
Yep,
but
exactly.
this is Reacher, and Reacher's going to give you what it said it's going to give you. There is truth in advertising within the Reacher series, so yeah, we are eventually going to have to get that Reacher Polly fight.
For
Very
sure.
honestly, Quinn not recognizing Reacher is still weird. I just think it's odd. He remembers how to be a gun runner for the mob, but he doesn't remember the guy that shot him in the head.
I
So
mean, I've never been shot in the head, so I can't say as to what what I would remember and wouldn't remember. Um, I think it's a plausible enough excuse. I do think it's a plausible enough excuse. I do think things are getting a little convenient though. I mean, who gets shot in the head and then just wakes up after they can't remember stuff and they're like, maybe I could be a drug runner or a gun runner for the mob. Yeah, that's
yeah,
that's great. I can do that. That's what I can do. So I don't know. It is weird, but it's plausible enough. I mean, it is a story, guys. It's not real.
amnesia.
Okay. It is a story. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna give a
amnesia
little latitude.
it's a very strange thing. Without getting on too much of a tangent, because me
Yes.
and Tim, we love some tangents. We have personal experience in real life. Amnesia
Yeah.
is not just a made up thing. It really
It's
happens.
not. Yeah.
It happens to real people.
Hmm.
We had a coworker, a very good friend of ours, who slipped and fell on some ice on his
Hmm.
way to work and had no idea who he or anybody else was. How long? Like 3 months, 2 months?
Yeah. 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 It
Yeah,
was
our friend
it was for a
Barry.
long time. It
Yeah,
was for a long
and
time. And yeah, I mean, he didn't even know how he got to work. So he didn't
yeah,
know how he got to work. He didn't remember I dropped him off at the hospital. I mean, there was a lot. So amnesia is real, okay? And
but he got to
that's
work.
why I say that's why I say it's plausible enough. Okay. It's
Yeah.
plausible enough for me to skip over it. It's a story. Is it a little convenient? Yes. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's not anything that's gonna ruin this for me because it's like, how come you can remember this and not that? It's enough. I can make it work in my mind.
Okay. So I get it. Reacher is really strong, but if I was on a burning ship about to explode and the only obstacle holding me in place is a pickaxe through my foot, I think I could get out of there, Thug Dog. I don't know about the guy's intelligence level. I mean, he's prying on the pickaxe into the
Try on your
decking.
foot.
Yeah,
Try on
yeah,
your foot.
that's
I mean,
yeah,
I don't get
yeah.
it. That's what I would have done.
The weakest point is your foot, man. You just got to yank
Yeah,
your
just
foot
rip
through
your
the
foot
axe.
out of there and go.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
understand
yeah.
what was
But
going on there.
yeah, that guy was not a middle giant though. So we'll.
Yeah, well, and you know what it reminded me of, Dan? What it reminded me of is he was sitting there and the pickaxe is through his foot. And he's like, "Don't leave me, don't leave me!" And it reminded me of on Robin Hood Men in Tights when Little John falls into like
Yeah,
3 inches of water and is like, "I'm drowning, I'm drowning." It's like so that's kind of it was like, dude, like that's not a really, really hard thing to overcome to get off the boat. They didn't hold you down. They didn't tie you down. They didn't put anything on top of you. They just
yeah.
left it with a pickaxe in your foot. I, I would have thought that would have
Excellent.
been something that he could have figured out, but maybe not. I don't know.
See, John, Teresa being alive makes no sense for someone like Quinn, especially if he thought she was a rat. So this is directly from the book too.
Yeah,
She's still alive, and it's a whole, taken human trafficking angle that they're working here. She's being held as a gift for. I
hmm
mean, and it is established that these Russians have the upper hand on him, and I believe it's one of the Russians that has a proclivity for redheads. So you can smooth over some things and say, here's a redhead, also she was a rat, have fun, that
yeah,
kind of thing.
exactly,
So
exactly. But yeah, I once again, plausibility, I think, is what we need to look at more than what would we do if we were writing this script. Look at what is plausible because it's just a story, and I think that this is something that does make sense. It does make sense when you look at it in the grand scheme of the context. So i'm
yeah,
i'm willing to let that one slide. I think it's not really a big deal. I think that Teresa being alive is kind of the crux of the story. That's the only reason that Duffy is still here is because we know Teresa's alive. So,
yeah,
and she got so frustrated with Reacher in the last episode when he said that she wasn't, and now they both know that she is, and so it's a little different now. But yeah,
yeah. And we established again, if you're going to be in a line of dangerous work uh in the Reacher show, you better be a He-Man. If you're any kind of normal looking dude, if you're like Midway, if you're Steve Elliott, or if you're in that guy, the receptionist from the 110th who tried to track down those plates for Reacher, it's not going to work out well for you, man. The little dudes are not making it, man. This is how we establish the viciousness of the villains, is how easily you
yeah.
get dispatched.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's correct. I mean, I do feel like I do feel like as soon as his landlord was knocking on the door, I was just like, "Oh, this isn't good." You know what I mean? It's just like the poor guy has no idea.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's been. I think so far, I think this is my favorite episode. I think there were obviously things that weren't perfect in it, but I think ultimately it gave me action, it gave me suspense, it gave me twists. The plot is clearly building. I think that that's something that's really big. I don't really know. I really don't know how this is going to end. I think that it takes a good couple of turns, and I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with it next week. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode so far. I mean, I think this season is really good. I think it's going to get a little bit. People are going to kind of trash on this season versus the previous two, just because it is a little on the slower side. But I actually don't mind that. I actually don't mind that. I think that a little bit of a slower season and a little bit of pulling back on some stuff has kind of been maybe a little beneficial to the series, and maybe opened it up to a little bit of an audience that maybe it wouldn't have had before. So yeah, I mean, I think it's doing great so far. What do you think?
I think this episode ramped up the action for the season in a huge way. So it was
Yeah,
clearly
it
this is
needed to
the
happen.
at which it,
Yeah.
like, because we had the Neagley fight, we
Mhm.
had the escape, both
Mhm.
from just the plow, and then in the woods, with the winch on the front of the four-wheeler, and the knives and the mud and all of that. Uh, then we had the Quinn, Russian
The
roulette
suspense,
scene.
the
Yeah, the
suspense with
suspense
that
with
one. Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the action and suspense, we had the James Bond, getting in a wetsuit and swimming up to the boat, exploding the boat, interrogation. So we really upped the ante on the action. So that was satisfying. We ended this up. We're going to Los Angeles. Is that what he said? We're taking a trip to California. There is no trip to California unless I am, like, I don't know. Somebody can get in here and tell me I completely didn't even read the book. It's been a while, but there's no trip to California in the book. I am 99.99%. There are no trips anywhere. Uh, I will get a little nitpicky here because at this point, Duffy knows there are no drugs, and she works for the Drug Enforcement Agency. She has already lost a subordinate agent, and he's been killed. She's lost a CI. She's totally off book. I don't know how much wiggle room and lack of supervision your average DEA team leader gets, but man,
Yeah.
she's booking travel all the way to
I
Los Angeles, on top of
I I
everything.
also I also kind of worry about, like, and don't get me wrong, like, I think after she lost Elliot, I think that they probably told her at that point that she's off, that you're on leave, don't, you're
Yeah.
and at that point, but normally if that's something that they do, don't they have to do they have to turn in their badge and gun at that situation, that way they don't go try to go vigilante? I don't know. I mean, I don't
Right.
know how the situation
Well, that
works,
would have went
but
poorly for her because she didn't have her badge until right after she made smoochy face with Reachers. So if they had done, and and again, you talked about it last week after Elliot gets killed. She calls in all of these, local law
yeah, police
enforcement,
cars
DEA,
and
right?
everybody was there. Yeah, I don't know.
She
It's like
didn't have to
there's a
show
man that's
anybody
dead.
her badge.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
at no point did she have to show any of those people her badge.
No. Well, I mean,
No,
and
because
look, if
Reacher
if
had
she
it
called her
the whole time.
if she called her own unit to come and take over the investigation, then maybe they wouldn't have had to
Maybe.
do it. But I don't know. I do kind of, there's a lot of space there that's kind of weird, and I'm not law enforcement, so I don't know what the standard procedure would be. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, that's the first thing I thought of. Is I thought to myself, I mean, I've watched a lot of TV, and typically when they
Yeah,
tell somebody that they're on leave because of something big and emotional like that, they say, give me your badge and gun, you're on leave.
yeah,
So I don't know if that's a typical thing or not. But um, I do think that this is something that is. I think that she and Villanueva are clearly under the assumption between the two of them that they're in too deep, and that this whole thing is just they're seeing this to the bitter end. So they don't care if they go to prison for it. He's willing to go to prison because he's loyal to her. She's willing to go to prison because she believes she's responsible for Teresa. So I don't think either one of them really care. They just want to make sure they get her safe, and then they're done. So,
yeah,
but yeah, you're right. She has absolutely no jurisdiction, and
yeah.
and the people that did have jurisdiction, their agent is dead, and apparently nobody told them. I would have thought that she would have alerted them, but I guess she didn't want them screwing things up, so they didn't tell them. So, and we
Just
found that out this week. So yeah,
just one more nail in her coffin. And they went from her
yeah.
and Villanova having little talks in the car about how
Mm-hmm.
bloodthirsty Reacher is to her
Mm-hmm.
looking at Reacher and be like, I think this captain needs to go down with his ship. And just next to row it off while he explodes. Like,
Yeah.
yep, that just happened.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, man. I
Yeah.
just the and everybody's like that, right? What was the guy's name in the first season? The guy that
Captain
was always
Mulberry.
trying to,
Yeah.
always tried to get on Reacher about the rules and everything, and then at one point he's just like, forget it, you're right, Reacher, let's just kill everybody. And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's like it
God
happens,
told him out.
to everybody, man.
Yeah.
It's like, at least when he was with the guys in the 1/10, they all understood that you have to kill everybody.
Yeah.
So that was different in season 2, but season 1 and this season, it's like he really had to get these people to come along with him. It's just like,
That
So
was
yeah,
funny. Like, and she's totally like, he needs to go down with his ship, and then they're changing, and she's all of a sudden mad at him. Like,
yeah,
how often do you do this kind of stuff? Well, often enough.
yeah. Well, and the other thing, the conversation with Richard was one that was also a little weird. Okay. I don't know that at that point, it would have been a risk that anybody would have been willing to take to send that kid back into the house and just say, okay. I mean, you at that point you probably have to just like have him go off with the cops and just like say something happened to him or he got kidnapped. I don't know, say something, but then it would be Reacher's problem, right? Because then he's the one that let the kid get kidnapped or something, or let something
Yeah.
happen to him. But you got to come up with something, because I don't know that blowing the cover would have been a great opportunity there. So I don't know. It all worked out very convenient that the kid happened to like Reacher enough not to say anything, I guess. But I don't know. He when he said he was going to kill McCabe, that was I guess what the clincher was. But I don't know. I didn't really buy that one either. I don't know what you thought about that, Dan.
His cover gets blown in the book, and honestly, I can't remember if it's Richard or the wife, Mrs. Quinn, that
Mm-hmm.
his cover gets blown to. I think it's Mrs. Quinn. I'm pretty sure, and it made more sense
Okay.
in the book because, like, he's telling her, like, your son and your husband and you aren't getting out of this alive except for me. When you're talking to a mother, worried for her husband
Mm-hmm.
and her son and trying to
Mm-hmm.
keep them alive, and now they've got she sees and the mother wasn't Mrs. Quinn was not quite as naive as Richard
Yeah.
was in the book or as he has been in this show. She kind of knows that she's been in mortal danger for a long time
He
in the book.
also I agree. Naive is the word I would use. Hey, go to that toy store for a second. I'm going to go into this dark alley and get some coffee.
Yeah.
I don't know that. Yeah, there are things that just aren't adding up. So yeah, I totally get that.
Well, I mean, he was kidnapped by his father's current employer and tortured until his dad is now subservient to this person. So you would think he'd be a little bit more wizened to the world, but he still totally believes his dad was a rug merchant who just bribed people to get rugs through easier before all this started. And somehow he has this sense that even though this guy who is, dangling over my dad's head, already kidnapped me and chopped off my ear, I'm safe now. This is the full extent of it. He won't do that anymore. He doesn't seem to fully comprehend the danger that he lives in every day. Whereas in the book, the wife was actually being molested, tortured by Paulie all the time, and had a very clear picture of her husband was a gun runner. His business had been taken over by another gun runner, and they were in mortal danger, and she had no way out. And maybe this guy is her way out, and that's why she doesn't blow his cover.
I feel like I feel like Richard, somebody that is, yes, he's a wuss. Let's just call it. He's a wuss, okay. But he also has that motivation that I don't know how in the world he would have stayed at that house, or why in the world he would have stayed at that house. Um, I feel like he's the kind of kid that would have run away a lot and and found a way because he's lived in that house forever. If McCabe ever shows up, what do I do? I need to go to this safe place or this place that nobody knows about, or have this place where I can hide, or that place where he didn't have any of that. And I thought that was kind of weird. I mean, I have an estate that is a substantial fraction less than the house in the show. And I can tell you that if I saw somebody like that rolling up to my front door, I've got avenues to get out of that house without anybody seeing. And so it's
Yeah,
kind of odd to me that Richard basically just hauls up in his room all the time when
yeah,
when he knows this really dangerous guy is here, and he never made a run for it. I guess in this particular episode he did think about jumping off that cliff, but that was
yeah,
as close as I saw to an escape. And so I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. If if it's a typical teenage kid that's in situations like this, they probably are trying to find a way out for themselves. I don't know. That's something that just kind of
yeah.
struck me. It
I
was
mean,
kind
he
of
has been
interesting.
off at school, so I guess
Yeah,
he has that escape, and I guess he feels hopeless, like that this guy has the resources to find him
yeah.
uh, if he tries to escape, and maybe his dad will be punished if he tries to get away, so he feels like he can't try it.
I mean,
So
maybe he wants to be there for his dad. I don't know, but I think, yeah, I think it's very interesting. So I don't know. It was very
yeah, but I mean, I know I'm picking apart the Duffy and why she is still roaming free and expending resources. As a taxpayer, if Duffy was a real DEA agent, I would not be pleased with how she is expending government
yeah.
resources. Yeah,
Yeah, if she ever runs for public office, I think it's going to be brought up in the campaign ads. What do you think, Dan?
yeah, yeah. I feel
I
like that
think
they might make a pretty good piece about that. So,
yeah,
but
exactly.
no, the
Exactly.
show though, this episode was great. And we're gonna get more Neagley now, which is great. And Neagley was not in this book at all.
Oh,
So how
okay.
she's gonna factor in to the end is really interesting. You know, I would think you would almost think that she's so popular they would focus on the books that Neagley was actually in, but they have found a lot of interesting ways to work her into. She was not in the
Mm,
Killing Force. She was not in the first book,
okay.
and she was not in this book either. The only appearance that she's made in the series that is accurate to the book is the second season, where she was one of many officers from the 110th in that book, but she was established before any of those. She was in a different book where he's protecting the vice president, was where she was introduced. But anyway, instead of focusing on stories that she was a part of, they are working her into whatever story they choose to do, and I think that's smart. And they have found good ways, believable ways for her to be there so far.
Hmm.
So I do enjoy that, and we're gonna get more. So that I have no idea how or what she's gonna do.
So one more thing, just one more thing I do want to bring up. So the way that the cover is blown to Richard is that Richard recognizes Villanueva. Okay. I don't know that in the heat of that moment, did he really have a chance to see who Villanueva was? I mean, that was the one thing. I mean, at this point, we've been what, weeks? It hasn't been like 2 days. Okay. It's been weeks at this point, right? So, you know, that's kind of one of those things I'm kind of trying to piece together is how would Richard have looked at Villanueva and been like, hey, that's that cop that you shot that I saw a very small fraction of a second as you were pushing me into the car. That was one of those things that maybe didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, he definitely saw him. I think it was established, and I don't know. There's two different ways to play it, like a traumatic experience like that. You either block it all out and your memories are very sketchy, or you could play it. And these are dramatic ways you can play it. I have no
Sure.
idea how this works in the real world.
Yeah, of course.
When you actually have these experiences, I just know how they
Yeah,
play it out in TV and movies. So
sure.
in fiction, one of two things happens: you totally block it out, your memories are all fuzzy, and you don't know, or you become hyper aware and have crystal clear photographic memory of the whole thing because it struck in your mind so much. So I guess they're going with the crystal clear
Yeah,
photographic memory approach
yeah. The
to the traumatic
the
event.
the forgetting approach would be like the Green Mile, okay, where
Yeah,
he couldn't remember anything, and then the remembering approach that would be, like Silence of the Lambs when Jodie Foster talks about growing up on the farm and all. So that's all, two completely different traumatic experiences remembered different ways in dramatic ways. So you're right. That's typically, I think, what they're going to do. So maybe that was the case. Maybe he just remembered everything because it was so traumatic. I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah.
And you know what? Even though I'm really, strained about Duffy being able to get them passage all the way to California, I am looking forward to next week because I have no idea what they're going to do in California
Yeah.
or why they're going because they didn't go to California in the book. So that'll be all new stuff for me. And we have more Neagly to come. I would hope. It wouldn't make any sense if this was all the Neagly we got. So that's going to be all new. So maybe this is going to wrap up in a significantly different way from the book, which will be fun for me because then it'll be a new experience. And I'm really enjoying the season. It was a slow burn to start, but if they can maintain, I don't know, do you feel like a TV series can maintain this level of action through the back end? Can they keep it this high for the
Yeah, I
all the
think
way
they
through?
can. I mean, especially knowing now what we've got coming, right? Because we know that we've got the epic showdown with Polly and Reacher. We know that we've got the point where Reacher and Quinn are probably going to be going at it. That's probably what we've got the next two episodes. And then, there's still lots of pieces out there, right? There's still lots of people that are in play. What's going to happen to these people? Right? We don't know what's going to happen to Beck. We don't know what's going to happen to Richard. We don't know what's going to happen to Villanueva. We don't know what's going to happen to Duffy. So there's lots of things to just kind of go back and forth and make it exciting, make it interesting. It's not like all the wild card pieces have already died or anything. No, there's still some people that are up in the air. And so that's going to make for some tense moments. It's going to make for some suspense. And then of course we know we've got at least two epic action showdowns, and that's going to be worth watching for sure. So I think it's definitely it's going to carry through the end of the season for sure. The one thing about Reacher that I think is kind of unique is because this is a novel series, and because we're doing this as a TV series in seasonal installments. I think that it is kind of unique because each season we're kind of picking up and we don't know exactly where they fall chronologically, right? I mean, are
Yeah.
these supposed to be the chronological orders that we've seen them in? Because I'm kind of getting the feeling like some of these are in different order. I mean, what do you think about that? And it's very much like Bond, Indiana Jones kind of thing, where it's like it could be literally anywhere. And I think that's kind of the idea. They don't really want you to know. I mean, I
Well,
think in the book there was a chronology, correct? Or
the
were the
books
books like that as well?
y- the books are vaguely uh that they're happening in the order that you read them, that they're published. There
Okay.
are a couple books that are very clearly uh, completely set as flashbacks. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a whole book that is basically the Jack Reacher origin story, which is a really
Hmm.
good one. I don't know if they'd be able to adapt that because you know you'd have to be doing some
Ritchson.
teaching on Ritchson, but it
Yeah.
basically tells why and how he left the military.
Hmm.
There's another one that flashbacks that his brother is actually a big part of, where
Hmm.
they go and meet with his mother when she becomes sick. That's a very good book. So there are a couple of those, but other than that, they're happening in chronological order. I feel like the series is also happening in chronological order, but
I
the
yeah, I
whole
feel,
point,
and I mean, and we know that season two came after season one because we had a character that was introduced in season one that we saw in season two, right?
yeah, yeah,
The sheriff
the
captain,
the
whatever the
the
guy was,
detective
the
Margrave.
the detective guy, yeah.
Yeah,
And so we know that those two are chronological, but this one I kind of got the feeling like it could have happened at any time. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, I kind of like that with my
yeah,
spy stuff. With my spy characters, I kind of like not having to wonder about what came before it, and just enjoying this particular story. So I kind of like that, but I don't know. I just thought
yeah.
that was kind of an interesting
Yeah, it's
interesting
big
thing.
in Reacher. Very few characters outside of Reacher himself
Hmm.
show up again. They're all there for one book, and in this setting, one season, and most of them are just gone. And you get a whole new supporting cast every time you start a new adventure with Jack Reacher.
Hmm.
Uh, and with that in mind, the order could happen in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't really matter that you can mix it up however you want and decide that's the order it happened in, because most of the time one doesn't lead to the other one. There are very few references back to things that happened before. Every now and again there is, but it doesn't take much to decide, I'll just shuffle it up. Like you could probably read the books mostly out of order. You would
You
not get
wouldn't even
lost.
know. Yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah, that's good to
and that's
know.
fun.
Yeah.
I like episodic stuff. Sometimes it's good to where you don't have to know every bit of backstory before you can enjoy this story. You know,
Hmm.
a lot of
Yeah.
today's entertainment requires too much homework to enjoy.
And that's kind of, well, and you and I are both huge fans of both cinematic series and comic book series. And so the difference between this and that, I think, is the cinematic series. It's very obvious what came before, and it's very obvious what comes later. And in comic books, it's like sometimes there's some things that can reset it, but for the most part, things do have a starting point and an ending point. And every issue, the next issue is what happens next. And
Yeah,
so this is just a little bit different than that, in that you could kind of enjoy this one succinct story without having to worry about what came before it. And if you want to watch season three and just enjoy season three without it seeing the first two seasons, you still can do that. but
right.
but yeah, and that's what was great about James Bond, Indiana Jones, Sherlock Holmes, all that stuff as well. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I always kind of like those kind of stories. That's why
Well,
I'm really enjoying this, I think.
I mean, people. I didn't even until I was older. Like people didn't even realize that Temple of Doom is a prequel.
Yeah, nobody
You know,
really
and it's
realized
not.
that. It's the first
Yeah,
chronological film.
yeah,
And that's something that nobody really talks about,
yeah,
because the order that they came out in, nobody really even thought about it, and it's just, oh, well, this is just this story. And so
yeah,
yeah, it's kind of funny that it's one of those things that nobody talks about. So yeah.
yeah,
I didn't like when the James Bond movies did get episodic. All right. The
yeah,
Craig movies were that way, and I just did not like that. There are times when a character like that, you can do that, but I just feel like that character, it was so ingrained that every movie was its own thing, and then you kind of had to make like a
a
three or four
continuous
movie. And
series. Yeah,
yeah, I didn't care for that. And so this is just good. I really enjoy it. I mean, Reacher is one of those. It's appealing to the masses. I mean, the men love it because it's got all the action. The women love it because they love Alan Ritchson. and I feel like there's a little something in there for everybody. So I really have enjoyed it so far.
So, yeah, I really do. I hope they keep making it, and I feel like this season is really. I think it's turned a corner. Not that I haven't been enjoying it, and I think it's going to be nonstop action from here out. We're going to have a good time. I
Mhm.
think we did cover it though. Did you have any other observations about the episode of the series that we didn't get to, Tim?
No, I don't think so. I think that that's pretty much it. I do think that, next week we're gonna dive in and get into some big stuff. I think I'm going to predict that next week is when we get the big fight between Polly and Reacher, and then I predict the week after that it's going to be Reacher and Quinn. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
Yep. And next week we will be back to 9 o'clock here
Mhm.
on Nerd Champs to talk about the next episode of Reacher, and catch us Tuesday night immediately after the end of Daredevil Born Again on Bone Bridger's channel at Bone Bridger. We will be there Tuesday. We'll be back here Thursday. And until then, we'll see you later.